Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Made it back to North Dakota. Trying to get back into the swing of things here. We got some more tools and stuff to work on things now. If you've seen in a previous video, I picked up a cherry picker while I was back home in Wisconsin. So now we can continue taking apart the front of this tractor. Got a good but used garage door opener from Dad that we can eventually put up on the garage door here. Got a couple of wheels here for a future project, so stay tuned for that. I brought the big boy puller out so we can make another attempt at taking the belt pulley off, because there's been a couple of different people that have both highly suggested that I take that approach, take the belt pulley off and take things apart that direction, as opposed to pulling the bevel gear off, because a couple of people are telling me that since that's the drive bevel gear, that that's actually probably pressed on there pretty hard, so it'd be easier to probably get the belt pulley off. So now that I got the right pulley, we can make a attempt at that, see if that gets us any further along. I also picked up a cheap parts washer while I was home. Figure that'll come in handy for cleaning out all of this ick once we get this apart. So I'll have to put that together one of these days. I brought back a few other little things, some sawhorses, brackets. Plan is, once I get the front of this tractor all disassembled and moved out of here, I'm going to set up a temporary table up here, so as I take apart all the transmission, I can lay everything out on the table as it came apart, clean it all back up and inspect it and keep it all laid out the way it was, and then eventually put it all back in the transmission, since that's basically, like I've said before, that's this winter's kind of goal. That gives me a nice big work surface to work on things. For Christmas, got a new dead blow hammer. It's really nice. Got that from the folks, so thank you to them. That'll come in very handy. Lixie 200H. Got removable tips on it, so that'll be really nice. Dad has one just like this that he's been using for decades, so he got me one. I also brought back a petrified rubber hammer, rubber mallet, that we garage sale stuff. Figured we could use that for beating things apart too. A couple of new lifting straps to go along with the cherry picker. Some more garage art. We've already seen that as a present from Ed and Steve. We got a scraper in the making here. We got a set of taps and dies that Dad picked up at that estate sale that I've showed you on recent videos. He kind of cleaned up and sent back with me, figuring we can use it for chasing threads for bolts and holes and whatnot for everything we take apart here. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I just kind of regrouping here lately. I just got in last night actually, so been catching up on chores and moving snow and housekeeping and whatever. Well, got most of that under control now. It's a cold day outside. It's, about 0 out there. So I figure it's a good day to come in the shop and putz on something. I'm not even sure what I'm going to work on here yet today, but we'll figure out something. Okay, I decided to work on taking apart the front end here a little bit. Got the engine slinged up on the cherry picker with, yes, that is a OSHA approved shackle there. Of course it is. We wouldn't use anything but the most approved things here. That's the shackle that was on the drawbar of the tractor, because I realized I don't have any good shackles here. I'll have to pick up some of them here. But I got the weight we're just dangling there, so I'll go up a little higher here and bring it over. I think I'm going to set it on that cart for now, so I can wheel it out of the way and then continue working, taking apart the rest of this. Okay, engine is out. I decided just to stand it up on end for now. because there's a lack of room in here. But now I can continue disassembling this assembly as time allows. I think I'll start to work on this next. So basically, once I get this front axle pivot pin loose, I can take this whole main casting, and I think I'll do the same thing, pick it up, put it up on end, stand it up on end, and shuffle that somewhere out of the way for now, and then decide what I want to do with the front axle at that point. That didn't go too terrible. Got the main casting stood up on end on that cart so I can roll that around the shop. Basically that part's ready for sandblasting, because I'm pretty much decided that this is going to be a full paint restoration. I think I'm pretty much convinced myself to go down that road, even though it's a lot of work. Then I got the front axle lifted up on a couple of benches here. Still got to take the straps off and reposition things here a little bit, fold the cherry picker back up and tuck that away in the corner here somewhere. That's the only downside to having that kind of thing in a little shop like this, is it takes up more space, but it's necessary. You can't move these big heavy parts without it. So now I can also disassemble all these wheels and spindles and tie rod and all that kind of stuff. Squirrel it all away until we're ready to tackle that stuff. So we'll just keep pecking along on things here, pecking away at it. But yeah, I could probably reposition, like I said, regroup here a little bit with this stuff, and then I'll probably go back to working on this next. Okay, tonight I've been working on disassembling this front axle a little bit. So I got this wheel off, cap come off first with the, there it is, 3 bolts. Then the main bolt that goes in the end of your spindle comes off, and then this outer washer with a pin in it comes off. That pin locates in the notch on the spindle to keep it from spinning. So that washer keeps this outer race up against the inner, like that I guess, up against the outer race on the outside. That is actually loose in the hub, so we'll have to address that. And then it has this spacer, I think it's supposed to be a spacer, in between. You know, it almost looks like the outside of a broken Hyatt roller bearing with those holes. So I don't know if this is actually correct or not. And then there's some type of like a leather, looks like a leather seal, washer, spacer. I don't know if any of this is actually correct or not, or if this has all been, you know, homebrewed, fixed. I'll have to do some research. The other side was very similar, except there was no spacer. There was just a couple layers of this. There again, it looks like leather spacers, so I'm pretty sure this is probably not right. You know, maybe things are wore out and they put that in there to take up space. That's your bearing there. I haven't got this one apart yet because it's kind of stuck on there. I'll have to work on that one. And then on the inside, you got your inner bearing, and then some type of seal here. Looks like maybe was a felt maybe seal inside of a metal housing. So finding that should be interesting. So yeah, just keep picking away at it here. See if I can get the rest of this axle and everything apart. And then I can squirrel some of these parts away and kind of reorganize and clean up the shop here a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to set up some sawhorses and bench here with a little table. I dug out some plywood there this afternoon, so we can set up a table to put all the gears and whatever on when we get this apart, is kind of the game plan. There, I got this side apart. So like I said earlier, I had to give it a little bit of inspiration to come off of there in the form of a brass punch and hammer to, I don't know if there's a burr or something on this outside, or if it was just gummed up, but the bearing, it slid pretty easy until it got to the end, and I didn't want to come the rest of the way, but I got it off. So once you get everything cleaned up and degunkified, we'll be able to inspect all that, of course. I guess this is as good an excuse as any to get the old parts washer out of the box and get that set up here pretty soon, huh? Oh, one question for you guys. What do you use for solvent in your parts washers? I've been kind of going around and around on that, trying to figure out what I should get to put in there. I want something that is non-flammable and preferably as healthy as possible. I don't want to just put regular old industrial parts cleaner in there, because that's some nasty stuff. I want to get something preferably, you know, a little bit better for a guy. I want to live to be a ripe old age. I don't want to be breathing all that fumes and crap in. So let me know what you have any experience with. If you have any suggestions on different brands and different types of cleaners. A little interesting on this side, different kind of seal. There's no metal on this one. It's just I'm assuming that's a felt seal of some sort. There again, we'll get them all cleaned up a little bit and see what's what. So I don't know exactly what's going on there, different side to side. Things have just been changed or what. We'll have to get this straightened out. This fork is bent. There's a stud, one of the bolts broken off in the hub here. We'll have to get that removed. So yeah, well, like I said, I'll just keep taking things apart, and I'll let you guys keep you posted. Okay, got the tie rod off. Gonna need to make new tie rod head bolts, because these are hopelessly wore out. So it's kind of interesting. The forks on the end of the tie rod are designed in such a way it's got a one big hole, one small hole, so you can only put the bolt in one way, kind of making things more complicated than they needed to, but that's how they did it. We need a new one of them. We need a new bushing in here. There is a bushing in there. You probably can't hardly see it, but there is one there. And then same story with this side. We'll need make up a new one of these because it's hopelessly wore out. The ends of the fork will need to be welded up and remachined too, because they're all wallowed out. And same story here, needs a new bushing. You can kind of see it a little bit better there, sticking out. But I'll have to press that out and put a new bushing in there to tighten up everything. And then of course we'll also have to put in new bushings for all of the kingpins and whatnot, because that's all wore out as well, of course. That'll be the next thing I'll try to get apart. Okay, getting the tie rod ends loosened up. Just for future reference, from center to center to the pins is about 39 inches. So when I go to put this back together, I'll have to general idea where it was. I got this nut loosened up so far, but this one is still stuck. I might have to put a little bit of heat on it. That wasn't too bad. I got the tie rod ends taken apart. A little bit of heat with the propane torch and they came right off. Like I said, we still got to straighten out that fork. A little warm yet. But yeah, threads all look really good. Those should all clean up just fine. We'll file off all these old pipe wrench marks and it'll be good to go. Okay, right spindle is taken apart. I figured I'd show you how this all works for anybody that might be curious about this. So the Kingpin goes in the axle, and then you got this jack bolt that threads into the axle into a hole, a stopped hole in the Kingpin. That's what keeps the Kingpin fixed in the axle. The Kingpin does not move. It shouldn't move. Okay, and then the spindle pivots on the Kingpin. There's a bronze bushing in either end of it that should have an ear like this. That is what is actually riding on the top and bottom of your axle. And of course, this is the bottom here. The bottom is always wore out on these tractors. It's the same with 2035s because the entire weight of the tractor is resting on that bushing. And as you turn, there's a lot of stress there. So it's really important to keep an eye on that on the tractors. Make sure that that bushing is in good shape because eventually it'll wear right through. And I've seen it many times where that bushing is shot and your casting is right on casting and then it just starts wearing everything out. So when it gets to that point, you got to replace that bushing. And if nothing else, even if you're not going to do that, make sure all your grease passages are clean and you keep pumping grease in there very regularly because that'll help extend the life of everything if everything is well lubed. Because that's a very high wear point. I've got several of the 2035s and they're all wore out there. As far as how the grease works, so on the top of the spindle here, there is well, it remains to be seen. I don't know if this is correct or not, but this one has a grease cap. That side has a cap, and then so that threaded on, and then it had a grease zerk that threaded through the cap, through the bushing into that cavity. So I'm guessing maybe that's original. That remains to be seen. I got to do some more research to figure out what it's supposed to have, or if that was a change over the years, or if this isn't even the correct cap for this tractor. It does have the hole here though, so that's why I'm speculating that maybe that is actually correct, or these have been replaced and this was an updated. I'm not sure. If anybody knows, let me know there. Anyway, one way or another, grease goes through the top into this cavity, and it goes into a hole that goes down through your Kingpin down to this second hole, which intersects that grease cavity. This hole for your jack bolt, that does not go into the grease cavity. That's a stopped hole. So then the grease can get pumped in, and then that's still inside of this cavity, which there's no grease is needed in here because that's not a moving part. It's strictly used as a passage to go in this channel, which gets into that bushing area where it actually is pivoting. And then same story, there's a grease little channel on the edge that goes to the top there, so some of the grease, when you're either pushing down the cap or pumping in the grease zerk, whichever, gets pushed into there, which is lubing that bushing area, if that all makes sense. So I figure I'd just kind of give you a little, show you that for anybody that's never had one of these apart. I've been through my 2035 and it's basically the same thing. You know, it's a little bit different, but essentially the same concept of how it's constructed and greased and whatever. So kind of interesting there. Little knowledge for you. This side's going to be a little more difficult to get apart because that jack bolt is broken off flush in there, so that might take a little bit more to get that apart. Good morning, everybody. I guess it's actually afternoon already. I spent this morning tuning up the old snowblower a little bit. Now I'm back to working on the 1525 Allis here. We must be living life right though. So I attempted to get this broken bolt off, and we succeeded, and we got lucky. So I put the center drill in the drill and then drilled it through with a drill bit, and then I figured I'd try an easy out first just to see if we would get lucky. And I had a sneaking suspicion we might be, because I could tell that the actual kingpin was loose in the bore, so I was pretty, I was expecting that jack bolt was not actually tight up against the kingpin. So drilled through, and like I said, put the easy out on there, and it came free without much issue at all, really. So now we can continue getting this spindle off, and then this axle will be stripped down, ready to go, basically. Then we can get back to what we were going to work on as far as setting up a little table here and starting to work on that project again. Okay, we got the spindle off. Just like the other side, pretty ugly looking, been beat up. I don't know what happened to the top of this one. It's all kinds of beat up and abused. It wasn't me. Next thing we're going to do is take off the steering arm from the spindle, because I don't know if you can see it, but that key must be like partially sheared or something, or missing, or replaced with something that doesn't belong, because the keyway doesn't even line up, and it's obviously been apart or farmer fixed or something. Instead of a lock nut or a lock washer rather, got a piece of wire kind of wrapped around in there. I don't know what they got going on, so we're going to see if we can get that taken apart and kind of assess the situation there. Okay, got that apart. A little bit tricky, but nothing we couldn't handle. So that nut was on there pretty tight. I had to put the cheater pipe on the breaker bar because I don't have it's an 1 1/16 nut. I don't have that in the big boy sockets over there. So I had to use the smaller one, but we got that off. As suspected, there was a piece of wire wrapped around the bottom of the nut to use as a lock washer, I guess. And then a little bit of heat and a little bit of beat, and the arm came out. There was no key in there, so this is why you can't make any assumptions when you're restoring a tractor. And that's why I prefer to take everything apart right down to the last part and piece and start from scratch. That way I know exactly everything is together right with all the pieces, all the keys, all the correct hardware and fasteners, cotter pins, everything. Because you can't assume anything was done right by a previous person. Even if it was a restored tractor, you can't assume anything, because you don't know what that last person did unless you personally saw them do it yourself. There's a few slivers of metal that came out of there. I don't know if I don't think that's the remnants of the key. It doesn't look like it. I'm thinking maybe that was just some corrosion that was in there, because this maybe wasn't in there seated quite right. I don't know. Either way, there was no key. It wasn't together right. So with a little cleanup and a new key, that should all be good to go. So moving on. Since I had some room to work here, I set up the cherry picker again, picked up the transmission and moved it back on my table just a little bit to balance it out a little bit better. And I also blocked it up on a couple of 2x4s. Reason being, when I get to flushing out the inside of the housing, I want to be able to stick a pan under there to catch all the stuff out of the drain hole when I'm flushing it out. Before, I was sitting right on the drain hole, so I couldn't have done that. So I think I've got it up on a couple of blocks. All I did was wrap a strap around each final drive there, and a chain through the clutch hole there, and lifted her up. Worked really good. So now I'm going to take all this back apart, and we'll go back to see if we can get that belt pulley off, I think. Well, it's the next day. I was trying to get the pulley off last night, having no luck, even with the big boy puller. The problem is I can't get a good bite on the back of the hub of the pulley. There just isn't quite enough material there to get a good bite on it with the jaws of the pulley. It looks like it should, but when you actually put it all together and you put a little tension on it, those jaws, they want to start coming off, and as it is, it's less than ideal there. So what I think I'm going to have to end up doing is getting myself a bearing splitter puller that I can clamp around the back edge of that hub. Put some standoffs here with a T-bar puller or whatever they call them across here, and hopefully that'll get a solid enough where I can put some actual good tension on there and hopefully get it to start moving. So I was getting frustrated, and like we've talked before, this is just a hobby. So if you're not having fun, if you're getting frustrated, if things aren't working good, that's a good sign. It's time to walk away and either call it a night or go and work on something else. So that's what I did. And I don't want to break anything. It's breaking this pulley is not an option, because you basically I ain't gonna find another one of these. Basically, they're pretty much unobtainium. So we can't break this pulley. So there's going to be no heating and beating. There's no pulling on a different part of it or whatever. We're only going to pull on the back of that hub, because anywhere else is just, you're going to break something. You're going to break a spoke or crack something or take a big chip out of it or whatever. We got to play this smart. So patience again is key. I just keep soaking it down, and we'll have to find some new tools or find somebody that has some to borrow and go that route. I did bring in these wheel paint stands that I made for the 612 that I had out in the snowbank. Brought them in last night, so they're just about dried off. I figure I can use them as sawhorses instead of putting together those other ones. You know, why build something that I already basically have? So maybe we'll work on that, rearrange, clean some more. There's always more shop cleaning to do. One of these days I got to go through and reorganize this mess of a cabinet too. Kind of get some method to our madness here, because we just kind of threw everything on the shelf as we were breaking down the tractor. So I think I'll probably wrap this video up here, and we will see you guys later. Thank you for all the watch hours. I appreciate it. Hopefully that continues to grow in 2022 here. I plan to keep putting out content on hopefully a weekly basis. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Hit the old like button. Helps the channel grow. See you guys later. Thanks for watching.